Peterson, Caitlin Clark is participating in shoot-around this morning, going through warm-ups, then some non-contact drills with the second team. She hasn't officially returned to practice, I'm told, but this is her first time working with the team since her injury.
Okay, this is wild. Caitlin Clark just stepped back onto the court, and the entire WNBA is shaking. After weeks sidelined with a nasty groin injury, the Indiana Fever's star guard is finally back in practice. Everyone's asking if this changes everything. Is she returning too soon? Or is this exactly what the Fever desperately needs? One thing's crystal clear. The league is not ready for this comeback. So, what do you think? Should Clark push for a return this season, or just shut it down until she's... So, here's the scene. Caitlin Clark finally made it back onto the court after being out for weeks with that groin injury. And instantly, the WNBA lost its mind. And it's not like they didn't see it coming, right? Deep down, everybody knows this league is pretty much built around her star power these days. Seriously, every ticket sale, every TV rating, every single highlight clip, Caitlin Clark has her fingerprints all over it. So if she's back in the mix, even if she's only halfway healthy, it completely changes the entire playoff picture for both the Indiana Fever and the whole league. That's why the panic button just got absolutely smashed. Let's be totally real. When Clark first went down, the narrative across the WNBA was basically screaming, Indiana is cooked. She wasn't just missing a couple of games. We're talking about a groin issue, and those injuries don't exactly vanish overnight. The Fever, who were already held together by what felt like duct tape with key players like Sophie Cunningham, Sydney Colson and Erie McDonald also sidelined, looked like a team in survival mode, not playoff contenders. Without Clark's insane shooting vision and her ability to pull 3 defenders every single possession, their offense was basically something you'd see at a YMCA scrimmage. And that's not even sarcasm, it was that bad. But here's where it gets crazy. Fast forward to this week, and suddenly videos are popping up from Fever practice. You see Caitlin passing, jogging, hitting a few shots, running through warm-ups. She's not officially in full contact drills yet, but she's close enough that everyone's asking the same question: when is she playing? Fans instantly went wild when those clips dropped, completely flooding comment sections with wild predictions, hilarious memes, and full-blown panic attacks about her return. And the league? Oh, they were probably biting their nails because she's the one player they absolutely cannot afford to lose, but also the one player they desperately need on the court to keep all those eyes glued to the product.
I think it is a good sign. So let's check this out. This is the schedule. 6 p.m. tonight, the Lynx. Yikes. All right. Guys, we're in must-win territory right now. For the playoffs, we are in must-win. The Storm, got to be Tuesday night. I don't think so on this either. However, 4 days later, basically 6 days from now, against the Sparks, and this is a big game.
But here's the kicker. Should she even come back this season? That's the massive debate blowing up everywhere right now. On one side, you've got the shut it down camp arguing that Clark's long-term health is worth way, way more than some rushed playoff push. Groin injuries tend to linger, and honestly, the last thing Indiana, or the entire league, needs is Clark re-injuring herself because she tried to drag a broken roster through the final few weeks. But then, on the other hand, you've got the Fever fans, and let's be totally honest, the WNBA marketing team screaming that the rest of the season is totally meaningless without her. They want her back, not just to make the Fever relevant again, but to keep those arenas packed and those cameras rolling.
It's a good sign. It is. I mean, seeing her out there, little passing the ball around, doing some calisthenics, getting the juices flowing. I know a lot of you are like, why come back? Why come back? Well, look, if she's back and she can get in the flow, and she does need to come back, I think with several games to go to get back and try to find her first rhythm for the year, really and truly, getting a good, then yeah, they become very dangerous with a big three.
Now, the panic part, it's not just about Caitlin's health, you guys. It's about the massive ripple effect her return would have. Just imagine Clark comes back next week against the Sparks. That's one of those must-win games. Instantly, the Fever's odds of actually sneaking into the playoffs totally change. And guess what? The Sparks and the Valkyries are battling in that same exact race. The league might pretend to be neutral on paper, but deep down, trust me, they're sweating bullets. Why? Because a Clark-led Fever in the playoffs means more viewers, more money, and way more drama for everyone. That's the cold, hard reality. The WNBA desperately needs Clark in the postseason, period. Without her, it's just another year of Liberty versus Aces, and fans outside of New York and Vegas are all going to be asking, seriously, why should I even care?
Because the Sparks are right there with us on the in the playoff race, and they hold tiebreakers. By the way, so do the Valkyrie. All right, we do have one win. I believe it's one win over the Mercury. And then we've got a Sky team that we should beat, a Mystics team that we should beat, but you can't, I mean, who knows? I think they beat us in the last game. And then we close out the regular season with the Lynx. We're not making the playoffs without Caitlin Clark. There. Yeah, I said it. We're not making the playoffs without Caitlin Clark.
All right, let's dive into Indiana's side of this entire mess, because Caitlin Clark being out basically exposed a ton of ugly truths. First, Aaliyah Boston hasn't been anywhere near as dominant without her. We've talked about this before, but Clark feeds Boston better looks than anyone. And without that partnership, Boston looks like a shell of the future MVP everyone was hyping. She still gets numbers, but it's not exactly scaring defenses. Second, Kelsey Mitchell has been absolutely grinding to carry the scoring. But even her best nights feel wasted, because there's just no floor spacing, no rhythm, and no Clark to draw attention. That's why Fever fans were wearing Kelsey MVP shirts. They're desperate for anything to feel like the season isn't totally slipping away. But here's where it gets even messier. Clark's presence doesn't just fix the offense. It also completely exposes every opponent who's been talking trash while she was out. Cheryl Reeve, the Minnesota coach who seems allergic to Clark's existence at this point, suddenly has to deal with her again. Other players throwing shade on social media, they might just regret it. Because say what you want about her turnovers or her rookie struggles, when Clark is on the floor, the Fever are flat out dangerous. The panic across the league isn't just about her health, it's knowing those easy nights against a depleted Indiana squad are officially over. And speaking of panic, let's not forget the refs. Oh yeah. The same WNBA officials who've been under fire all year for letting Clark get absolutely pounded like she's in a boxing match. You think they're happy about her return? Please. Every time she steps back on the court, that microscope is glued to them. If she gets fouled hard, the outrage is instant. If they miss calls, social media lights up with clips in seconds. The league knows Clark's safety isn't just about keeping her healthy. It's about protecting the one player fans are actually tuning in for right now. And the refs, who've already proven they're in over their heads half the time, are suddenly under immense pressure to become competent. Good luck with that. But hold on, let's talk about Clark's mindset. Because honestly, this is where the story gets really interesting. Caitlin isn't wired to sit out if she feels like she can contribute. This is the same player who carried Iowa through absolute wars every March, who never ducks competition, and who thrives when the pressure is stupid high. If she feels she can play, she is absolutely going to push for it. And from all reports, she's already getting restless, sitting on the sidelines, watching her team blow leads and collapse in the second half like it's their part-time job. She wants to be out there. The big question is, will the Fever medical staff actually let, or will the league step in, quietly nudging Indiana to protect their golden goose from herself? It's a total mess, really, and kind of hilarious when you think about it. Other stars miss games, and nobody outside their fan base even notice it. But Caitlin Clark touches a basketball in warm-ups, and the entire league shakes. That's why WNBA and panic isn't an exaggeration. It's the reality of how completely dependent the product has become on her presence. And here's the honest truth. If she comes back and looks sharp, even at 80%, it could completely flip the playoff picture upside down. If she doesn't, well, the Fever are basically toast, and the WNBA knows that spotlight dims fast without her. So let's break down what this comeback really means. Starting with the Fever. Right now, Indiana's playoff hopes are dangling by a thread. They've been patching the rotation with hardship players, rookies, and literally whoever they can grab off the street. It's not even an exaggeration. At this point, the Fever could hold open tryouts at the YMCA, and fans wouldn't be surprised. Without Caitlin Clark running the offense, this team has been running in circles, coughing up leads, and handing games away in the third quarter like they're free samples at Costco. Caitlin returning to practice doesn't magically fix all that, but it absolutely gives the Fever a pulse. Even her presence on the court changes the dynamic completely. Defenses shift, spacing opens up, Aaliyah Boston can finally breathe again because she's not triple-teamed every possession, and Kelsey Mitchell suddenly doesn't have to play superhero for 4. Clark's gravity, even if she's not at full speed, instantly makes the Fever watchable and competitive again. The panic from rival teams comes from knowing exactly the Sparks, the Valkyries, even the Sky, teams hovering in that same playoff zone. They do not want to deal with Clark returning in these last few weeks. Because one thing we've learned about her, all the way back to Iowa, is that she doesn't ease her way back in. She goes full throttle. Remember her first games as a rookie? She was launching threes from the logo like she'd been in the league for 5 years. That's just who she is. If she's healthy enough to get on the court, she is healthy enough to torch somebody. And let's be super real, the WNBA has a problem. They spent the last month quietly enjoying a Clarkless Fever, because the games were dull enough that nobody outside hardcore fans really cared. Now that she's potentially back, the spotlight returns, and so does the intense scrutiny. Every single foul, every shove, every hard screen is going viral. Every bad ref call turns into a trending clip. The league simply can't hide from it anymore. And that's a huge part of the panic too. You could already see the reaction online. Clips of her shoot-around circulated like it was the second coming. Fans immediately started speculating on which game she'd return, posting highlight montages, and arguing about whether she should sit the season out or come back for the playoff push. And as usual, the loudest voices weren't even Fever fans. They were people who either desperately want to see her succeed or desperately want to see her fail. That's Caitlin Clark's impact in a nutshell. Love her or hate her, you're watching. Now let's talk about the Fever's playoff picture. Without Clark, they're basically hanging on life support. The Sparks hold tiebreakers, the Valkyries are right there, and every single loss just digs a deeper hole. The Fever cannot afford to split games anymore. They need wins, plural, and they need them now. That's why her return is being watched like it's the Super Bowl. If she comes back for the Sparks game, that's essentially a do-or-die moment. Lose, and the Fever might as well pack it up. Win, and suddenly they're right back in the mix. That's the definition of panic for the rest of the league. As everyone knows, the WNBA does not want its golden ticket sitting at home during the playoffs. Let's be totally honest here. Caitlin Clark's return isn't just about Indiana. It's about the WNBA's very survival in the spotlight. The league has been absolutely eating off her name all season. Sold-out arenas, Clark, TV ratings, Clark, jersey sales, Clark. Every time she takes a shot, whether it goes in or not, it ends up on SportsCenter. You think the league wants to sell playoffs without her? Please. They will do backflips if she's back in time to lead the Fever into the postseason. But here's where it gets funny. The very same players and coaches who've been throwing shade at her all season are now pretending they're not bothered. Cheryl Reeve swore up and down that the MVP race was all about Nafessa Collier. Other players complained about the hype. And yet the minute Clark shows signs of returning, the tone completely changes. Suddenly they're all business. That's because they know if she's on the court, their road to the playoffs or to a championship just got a whole lot harder. The panic is real, no matter how much they downplay it in interviews. And let's not forget the fan. Fever fans have been through absolute hell watching this team blow winnable games. They've been begging for Clark to return, flooding comment sections with "we need her back" posts, and making memes about the team looking like a G League squad without her. Now that she's shown up in practice, you'd think Indiana just won the lottery. The optimism is sky high again. The only question is whether that optimism will survive if she returns too early and looks rusty, or worse, tweaks the injury again. That's the massive gamble. Groin injuries aren't like ankle sprains where you can just tape it up and go. They linger, they nag, they can flare up at any moment. If Clark pushes too hard too soon, she risks re-injury. and the Fever medical staff has to weigh that against the reality of the season. They aren't winning anything meaningful this year. At best, they're fighting for a bottom seed in the playoffs. Is it really worth risking your franchise players' long-term health for that? That's the intense debate happening behind closed doors, even as fans chant for her return. But knowing Caitlin, she is absolutely going to fight to play. That's just her DNA. And honestly, that's why people watch her. She doesn't shy away from the spotlight. She embraces it. That's what makes her different. So while logic might say, sit her down, reality says she'll be back sooner rather than later. And when she does, the entire league will feel it. Now just imagine the headlines if she drops 20 in her first game back. Imagine if she hits a dagger 3 against the Sparks, or the Valkyrie. The internet will absolutely explode. The Fever will be back in the playoff picture, and the WNBA will get the storyline it desperately needs. That's the nightmare scenario for her critics, and the dream for everyone who's been waiting to see her light it up again. That's why there's panic, because deep down, even her haters know, she moves the needle like nobody else in the league. So yeah, Caitlin Clark returning to practice may not seem huge on the surface. It's just warm-ups, some passes, a few jumpers. But in the bigger picture, it's the domino that could flip the entire playoff race, shift the league narrative, and drag the WNBA back into relevance, just in time for the postseason. No wonder everyone's sweating.